Okay, so get this right. Imagine Thanos, the big bad from the Avengers, right? And he like snaps his fingers and wipes out half of all life because like there's too many people, not enough resources.
Yeah, classic example of the scarcity mindset.
Totally. But here's the thing. While Thanos is, doing his thing over in the Marvel universe, the real world is actually getting kind of better,
Yeah.
which is a wild thought. And it's what we're talking about today. We're digging into Superabundance, this book by Marian Tupy and Gail Pooley. Have you heard of this one?
Absolutely, I have. It's a fascinating read.
Yeah, they explore this whole idea that we might be living in a time of like crazy abundance, even if it doesn't always feel like it, right?
Right. And what I find so compelling is how Tupy and Pooley take all this hard data, right? All
Yeah.
the stuff we hear every day and use it to challenge the doom and gloom.
Okay, but how can they say that? Seriously. Like every day it's climate change and social unrest and the economy's a mess. It's a lot.
Absolutely. And that's where our own psychology comes into play, because our brains are kind of hardwired to focus on the negative. Like way back in the Stone Age, that kept us alive, right? Better to freak out about a noise in the bushes than get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But today, that same instinct might be making us miss the bigger picture.
So we're basically wired for a world that doesn't really exist anymore.
Exactly. Tupy and Pooley argue that this whole negativity bias thing can really stop us from seeing those long-term positive trends that are actually happening. Like, for example, they talk about how global well-being, if you look at things like income, life expectancy, education, it's actually been on the
But
rise,
seriously, even with everything going on,
even with everything. And that's a disconnect worth thinking about. Our entertainment might be all dystopian futures, but the data tells a different story.
okay, that's interesting. But I'm not going to lie, my brain immediately goes to, okay, but overpopulation, like
Yeah.
more people has to equal fewer resources, right? It's like that image of rabbits in a field. You just keep multiplying until there's nothing left but dirt.
Yeah, you just perfectly summarized Thomas Malthus, this 18th century scholar who predicted exactly that. Population growth would totally outstrip food production, leading to mass starvation. And it's a view that a lot of people still hold today.
Yeah, it makes a certain kind of sense. But we're Malthus and all the end is nigh, folks, right?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, because Tupy and Pooley introduced this economist named Julian Simon. And Simon had a very different view. He basically said we shouldn't underestimate human ingenuity. More people, sure, but that also means more brains to innovate and solve problems.
So instead of being doomed by overpopulation, we could actually be saved by our own ingenuity.
That's exactly it. And Simon wasn't just all talk. In 1980, he made this famous bet with Paul Ehrlich. You might know him. He wrote The Population Bomb, which predicted, you guessed it, widespread famine and resource collapse.
Oh, wow. So what happened?
Ehrlich was convinced that as the population grew, resource prices would skyrocket. But Simon bet that they'd actually fall.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Who won?
Simon won, and not even close.
What? No way.
They based it on a basket of 5 metals: chromium, copper, nickel, tin, and tungsten. Ehrlich chose them because they were essential for different industries, and he thought their prices would inevitably go up. But over the next decade, the prices of all 5 metals actually fell, some by a lot.
So Ehrlich was wrong. The population grew, but these essential resources got cheaper. How is that even possible?
Innovation, new tech, more efficient ways of getting the metals out of the ground, and even discovering substitutes. Turns out, when we put our minds to it, we can find ways to do more with less, which totally goes against those Malthusian predictions.
So Ehrlich bet on scarcity, and Simon bet on us. And we won. Wild.
Yeah, it really makes you think. And he gets to this really important point that Tupy and Pooley talk about a lot. We're not just, using stuff up. We're problem solvers, innovators, creators. We see scarcity. We don't give up. We find a way around it. We invent something. And a lot of times we end up better off than we were before.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we measure better off? I mean, some metal prices went down, cool, but it's a complicated world out there. How can we be sure we're actually experiencing abundance, like on a big scale?
You're right. It's a great question. And that gets to how Tupy and Pooley actually measure progress. They go beyond just looking at, prices in dollars. Because let's face it, those can be all over the place, right? Influenced by everything under the sun.
Totally. So what do they look at then?
They focus on time prices. Have you heard of this?
Time prices? No, fill me in.
Okay, so it's really cool, actually. A time price measures how long it takes for someone to earn enough to buy something. Any good or service, really. It's way more about the human side of things, Affordability and progress. From our perspective, like, for example, think about how long it took the average worker to earn enough to buy like a gallon of milk back in, say, 1950 compared to today.
Yeah, I'm guessing it took a lot longer back then, even if the price in dollars was lower.
Right. You
Yeah.
got it. And this pattern, it's everywhere for tons of goods and services. Tupy and Pooley call it time price deflation. So basically, even if the price of something is the same or even higher in dollars, the amount of time we have to work to buy it has gone way down.
No kidding. So even if our wallets don't feel that much fatter, the time we spend working to buy stuff is shrinking. That says a lot.
It really does. It means more time for things we enjoy, education, whatever we're into. And that all adds up to a better quality of life. It shows how innovation isn't just about cheaper, it's about making things attainable for everyone.
Okay, this is making sense now, I'm not going to lie, but I do still have some worries. Like, what about the environment? All this talk about abundance and progress, doesn't it come at a cost, you know? We're using more resources, creating more waste. How does that fit into this whole superabundance idea?
That is a crucial point, and you're right to bring it up. And it's something Tupy and Pooley talk about directly. They know environmental concerns are real and really important, but they say the answer isn't to just stop trying to progress or, go back to some scarcity mindset. It's about being smarter, more innovative, more efficient with what we use.
So not living in caves, but figuring out how to live better and sustainably with what we've got.
Exactly. They talk about dematerialization, basically doing more with less. Think about your smartphone.
Oh man, good example. My phone is my lifeline. Camera, music, GPS, games, even a little TV sometimes.
There you go.
Like
One
that.
device that replaces like a dozen things that would taken up way more space and resources in the past, and that's just one example. We see it everywhere. Cars are lighter and way better on gas now. Building materials are more sustainable and take less energy to make.
So it's that whole work smarter, not harder thing. We're doing more with what we have, which is great for us and the planet, but this level of innovation, it's not magic, right? What makes it happen?
You're so right. Tupy and Pooley are super clear about this. You got to have the right conditions for this kind of flourishing to happen. They say free markets are key competition and a culture that's cool with risk-taking and rewards new ideas. Those are all essential ingredients for superabundance.
So they're saying capitalism is the answer. Because let's be real, it's got its issues too.
It's definitely more nuanced than that. It's not about saying capitalism is perfect. More like, so far, it's been the best system for coming up with new stuff and creating wealth. But, and it's a big but, they stress how important inclusive institutions are.
Inclusive institutions, what's that mean exactly?
Basically, it means that politically and economically, everyone can participate and benefit. Things like everyone having strong property rights, access to education, a fair shot at starting a business, and a safety net so no one's totally out of luck if things go wrong.
So making sure the pie keeps getting bigger and everyone gets a slice.
Perfect way to put it. They argue that if you can combine a system that rewards new ideas with a society that actually values fairness and opportunity for everyone, you get the perfect recipe for superabundance.
Yeah.
But, and I think this is really important, they also say that we're still wired for a world that doesn't really exist anymore. And that can cause some serious misunderstandings.
Okay, now you have to explain that. Like, I'm back in the Stone Age worried about saber-toothed tigers, so we're basically wired for scarcity even when it's not really there? Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get it.
Like our brains are still scanning for threats, even if we're surrounded by, proof that things are actually pretty good. And that can really mess with how we see things, like wealth, for example, or inequality, even something like trade.
Trade? What's scary about trade? Besides maybe a package getting lost in the mail.
It's that scarcity instinct again. We see trade as this zero-sum game, Like if another country's doing well, it must mean we're losing. But Tupy and Pooley, they'd say, hold on. Trade, when it's done right, it lets countries focus on what they're best at. And that means more stuff for everyone in the end. Win-win, if we can just wrap our heads around it.
Okay, I'll look at that. I see what you mean, but even if I buy all this, we're living in superabundance stuff. It's not like everyone's rich, right? So how do they explain that?
That's the million-dollar question. And Tupy and Pooley don't shy away from it. They really dig into the whole wealth inequality thing and how we make sure everyone benefits from progress, not just a lucky few.
Yeah, because it's easy to feel good about, cheaper TVs or whatever. But what about the stuff that matters? Like healthcare, housing. The cost of those things is crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where those inclusive institutions come in again, big time. Education, healthcare, people can get a good job.
Yeah.
That doesn't just help them, it makes society stronger, more innovative overall. It's about building a system where everyone wins when there's abundance.
So superabundance, it's not just about having more stuff. It's about creating a system that's actually fair, where everyone has a real shot.
Right.
But I got to ask, Even if we figure all that out, what about that argument that humans are the problem? That the planet's better off with less of us, or even, no people at all?
Yeah, that's definitely out there, that way of thinking. And Tupy and Pooley would talk about how these anti-humanist and anti-natalist ideas are becoming more common. And I often come from a good place,
Yeah.
you know, this concern about our impact on the planet.
It's tough, though, right? No one wants to feel bad for existing.
It's a conversation that needs to happen, but it's definitely sensitive. Tupy and Pooley, they take those concerns seriously, but they say, look, just focusing on having fewer people, it misses something really important.
Yeah.
Human ingenuity, that's also what allows us to solve those environmental problems. It's about finding that balance, not jumping to extremes.
So, like, instead of ditching the planet, we figure out how to live on it sustainably.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that human ingenuity that got us this far and using it to build a better future for everyone.
I'd say that's a much better plan than, the Thanos option. But how do we even start changing the conversation? There's so much fear and negativity out there.
Well, first we have to realize we all have biases. We got to challenge our own assumptions and really listen to different perspectives. Be critical about the information we take in and be willing to have those tough conversations even when it's uncomfortable.
And maybe remind ourselves that, yeah, there's bad stuff happening, but the data's telling us there's another side to the story. A story where humans can actually use their smarts and their innovation to build something amazing.
Absolutely. And that's a story worth telling.
Totally agree. Well, that was a wild ride. This whole superabundance thing has really got me thinking.
It definitely makes you think.
It really does. Like, it makes you question everything you thought you knew about the world you know.
It reminds us we get to decide what the future looks like. It's up to us to make choices, to innovate, to believe in what humanity can do.
So well said. And that is a wrap on today's deep dive. Thanks for coming on this journey with us. Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time.